Okay, part two.
Okay, now we are back. So the second part of this presentation is not so much a presentation. It is, I want to have the time to address your questions. So Adrian has already passed to me. Those questions are from Chinese and Japanese teachers only, right? Okay, so I look at those questions. Some I believe we have answered in the first hour, but some might take a little bit more elaborated answers. So I'll just go over every question. So the first one is the background info, right? How long has BU been doing hybrid modality, which I have answered in the first hour. But if you have follow-up questions to that, anytime anyone just can type in chat or raise your hand, because this part is more like a more structured Q&A. All right. So the second question is asynchronous teaching in combination with in-person class is very much like a flip model, if I'm sure, but I'm sure asynchronous learning can extend much further than before class preview thing. So I hope you have seen some examples in the first hour that go beyond just the before class preview. But for this one, I do want to combine that with the second question here. For hybrid model, how do you make the lesson seamless from classroom to asynchronous and vice versa? So these two have to do with the two ways we approach online learning. So the first one you guys mentioned is flip model, right? If you use the flip model, students learn content at home in order to be ready for the next class. So if you adopt the flip model, the examples are grammar instruction, they watch the video at home, or about cultural concepts, they do pre-reading, they do dialogue video pre-watching to get them ready for class. If you choose to use this model, you want to make sure there are always follow-up activities the next class or next classes for them to be able to apply what they have learned and for you to see them demonstrate learning in the next hour when they come back from learning on their own. Right? So you can do class communicative tasks, applying the learned structures or concepts in class. You can clarify common misunderstandings because we always have comprehension check task together with those learning content materials, right? So from reviewing them, you already see, well, there might be some common misunderstandings. So those are the things you want to address the next class. So this is the reminder if you want to go with flip model. You can also go with assignment model, right? Which means students learn content in class and then they want to apply or demonstrate learning in the online tests. If you do with this type, you would have them do presentational videos, recorded conversations, or projects on the asynchronous day. If you do it this way, you want to ensure you have enough scaffolding before they do the independent work on their own. So linguists, do they have enough linguistic knowledge to do this task? Do they have enough cultural understanding to conduct this task? And the logistic is also important. We sometimes forget. Do they know how to use the tool I asked them to do? Do they know in this app which button to click to record, for instance? So I always have screenshots before the first time they use the new tool. I have the step-by-step, okay? Go to this URL and click on this specific button, and I have a picture there so that they wouldn't get lost. Okay, so an interesting thing is you can actually combine the two. For instance, I personally do this. I do flipped learning for our daily assignments. And then I have communicative tasks, which is the assignment model for our plus day. So I'll just show you the fourth thing, what we do every day and what we do on the communicative day, the Thursday. So this is an example of our everyday homework. It is not as much as the Thursday. So I should show you. What we typically do is I have one grammar or function learning. So this one, they learn 结果. This phrase means as a result. So it's a storytelling device. right? So I have them watch a video and 3 quick sentences to let me know if they understood what they have learned. And then I have them do pre-reading. So pre-reading, I do 1 recording because for Chinese, the tones are especially important. So I have color-coded lesson text for them to read, paying attention to the tones, and they record, and I will give them pronunciation feedback for this one, and to make sure they read the text before they come to class. And then the next page is also about the section of text they just read. This is reading comprehension. So I have true false questions because this can be easily graded by the computer. So I don't even need to check this part. And this one is about the undertone of this specific sentence in the text. So this person is being sarcastic, and also some vocabulary from this text they really need to know before coming back to class the next day. So this is every day's homework. And the last thing is in Chinese, character writing, right? So I have several words, and I have this is a website that demonstrates the stroke order. And this is an example, in order for them to know which button to click, even though it's just next, I still circle the next to tell them, okay, this is if you want to find the next character. And this is where you can erase their demonstration and do the test on your own. So always have screenshots, because you would be surprised at how not tech savvy students are. At least some of them are that way. They will always come back to ask you the same question. Where do I find this? How can I record my voice? That kind of thing. So this is always helpful in front of them. Okay, so that's our everyday assignment. So pretty much it's flipped learning. So I want them to get ready for the next class. And the Thursday, that's what you saw. It's communication day, so I have a small message. It's the same every week. So I tell them it's graded based on completion. So don't worry, I would just want you to communicate more. And then this is a flip grid task. That's what I meant by keeping every task in one portal. Even though it's flip grid, I want to have a page here so that they see, okay, this is where we go, and this is the instruction. And the next one is to watch. This is 结果. So this one is what they have learned in the daily assignment. And then we have exercise in class. And on Thursday, they're interpreting an authentic material in which this phrase is used. So they watch this, I think that I have 2 videos, or 1 on each page. So 2 videos, they use it in real example, and they answer questions for me to make sure they understood it. And at the end, the International Pen Pal program. So that's what they do on Thursday. So completely different from what they did for the days before. Okay, so
today we'll be talking about
this. Okay, so you can combine the 2. It's not a crime that you can only do one approach when you teach. All right, next question. I know BU offers a wide range of content-based courses. Yes, that effort started like 5, I would say at least 5 years ago. So all of our higher level courses are now content-based, so students choose which course they want to take based on their own interest. I do a lot of media related courses, the Chinese through TV series, News Chinese, Chinese through theater. Some of my colleagues, they do more intercultural communication, business Chinese, Chinese translation. So they're all content-based, based on, what you're interested in, right? And it might be a possibility for you guys, good for you in the future. You would like to hear some ideas on how asynchronous teaching can be effectively adopted in content-based courses. So this one really depends on which course you're teaching, right? If you're teaching translation, you would have students do translation practice, for instance. Right? So I'm going to speak from my personal experience. For 300 and 400 level courses, I do all higher level courses as project-based learning courses. So although in the system, school system, those are 3-day meetings, 3-day in-person courses. We can always do assignments, right? So we have 2-day. So I always tell my students, those days you do not have to come see me, you have assignments. So what we do is, so for this course you have already seen, for Chinese do TV series, I have them do 1-day episode watching and do the reflection. You already saw that's the course block. The other day, you also saw this example, that's a social reading. They read the novel the TV series is based on, and then they just virtually talk to each other in the reading activity. In news Chinese, what they do is they do 1 day, they study one current news event. So this one is they do the study of the current news event, and the next day they come back to the class, they give a 3 to 5 minute presentation on that news event because it addresses the topic, right? And then the other day they do news project. This one will last across several weeks. Right? So the news projects could be source data analysis. They go out to do interviews and they record, and they do survey. They can write news reports. That's the other day. So it's, in a sense, it's as if in the higher levels, we have 3 class day and 2 asynchronous days. It's just they are given in the form of assignments. Okay. In Chinese through theater and performance, this class, one of the days they watch, this is 300 level, so they don't watch a full TV episode. They watch drama clips. So the clips are shorter, but they still do the watching and reflection on the content. So the clips is usually like 30 minutes. I take 30 minutes out of the movie, so they can already analyze the relationships of the characters in the movie. They can already tell what the movie is about, but they don't watch the whole movie. And the other day we do theatrical project, one of which is what you saw, the micro movie. They did brilliantly in Zoom. And the other types of projects, I can have them do dubbing. I had them do readers theater, which is also one of my favorite activities, but I don't think we have time to go into details about it. But if you're interested in teaching through theater, theatrical projects, readers theater is a really good thing to look into. Okay, so those are the things what we did in the 300, 400 level courses. I want to pause a little bit to see if anyone have questions about the higher level asynchronous modules or tasks. Higher level? No questions? Good.
We have, I think the biggest adjustment here is going to be for the first and second year classes. So I imagine there will be more questions about first and second year level.
I see. Okay, so this one, just keep it in mind if in the future you want to run content-based higher level courses. I really love teaching those courses. Although I also work really hard for those because those are the courses that do not have textbooks. So everything is on you to develop. But it's also very rewarding for the teacher. It's really fun to teach those courses. Okay. Our next question is, what would be an appropriate course load on Canvas to cover the equivalent of 15-minute in-class instruction? So we already briefly answered this. It depends on the activity you have students do, right? So here's just a general picture of it. If you do a communication tasks, you can have several, especially you want a variety in different communication modes and modalities. So 3 to 5 is what I would think appropriate. Self-learning tasks, those things don't tend to be too long. You can also do 3 to 5. But if you want to, again, you want them to watch the whole TV episode, watching and reflection, you can only do 1. And actually that one activity will go over the 50 minutes because even just watching it, it's 45 minutes. In reflection, you take time to do. But since the higher levels, we don't have everyday assignments. They are fine with just 2 bigger assignments in the week. If you do project for each week, you do 1 step of the project, and just always remember to check their progress the next day. Okay, next question. Strategies for making interactive asynchronous lessons and activities. So we have seen a lot of examples of the lessons and activities, but I want to specifically, I think this teacher is asking about interactive, right? So I have several notes about making the activities more interactive. So you want to make them feel that they are actually doing something instead of just sitting there. And you also want them to feel they are not alone in front of their class, in front of their computer. So first, we already mentioned you want to create a purpose, and you want their activity to have an audience. So if it's a writing test, you can even have them do like peer editing, right? So someone is always reading what you write, or give each other feedback. So you can have them respond to others, like the pen pal program. You can have students do collaboration online, like the projects or recorded conversations, so they still see people, right? Even though it is just virtually. Gamification is another way to make it interactive. Students really like to have some hands-on activities on it. You can do games, you can do challenges. I just showed you guys the popping the balloon into the train cars, right? So for each of those review games, I also have an extra challenge. I tell them how much time I, as the teacher, I myself need to complete the task. And if they want, they can try to beat me. Right? In my class, I have students do weekly participation forms. So they self-evaluate, it's a Google form. They self-evaluate their own participation that week. They are encouraged to give me the achievements. So some students will list like they went to a Chinese restaurant and ordered in Chinese. They helped someone who can only speak Chinese, whatever they think is their achievement. That week they will report it, right? So many students like to say, I beat Huang Laoshi, which is my Chinese name. They address me. I beat her in this task. So sometimes I cheat a little bit on that. I didn't include the real time I complete the text, because of course the tasks are easier for me, right? So I always add like 30 seconds to my real record so that they have a chance to beat me. So they're happy when they beat me. And you can give students levels and badges. So for instance, I have one example. So you can see that a lot of my activities are in this portal, in this app, right? So I don't want students to learn a whole lot of technology tools, and this is useful, and you can do many types of tasks on it. So I try to just keep most things on it. So this is a pronunciation journey. You can see there's a lot of tests. It's not 1 week, it's through the semester. And it's completely self-paced. They can choose to do 3 pages this week and 5 pages next week. It's up to them, but they do level up. For the first 10 quests, so they're called quests. If you look at each page, they're called quests. So this is for beginner first semester students. And the first 10, they get a yellow star. So so this system allows you to do the stickers. So you can just post, this teacher's page. So on students page, I can just click and paste the tokens. So first 10, they get green stars, and then they have yellow stars for the next 10, and blue tulip for the next 10. And then at the end, if they complete the whole journey, they will get this gift. So that to celebrate that you've reached the last quest of this journey. So they really like this kind of students like stickers. Even college students, you wouldn't think they would like stickers, but I overheard students talking to each other. I'm excited to get this yellow apple on my assignment. So yeah, apparently it works for them. So I see something on chat. I love the self-achievement award. Yeah. So I just try every possible way to encourage them to do more. And at the end, also, if you want to make sure your tasks are really interactive and students like it, it's always great to just ask students for feedback. Do they like this activity? Do they not like this activity? If they like it, why? If they don't like it, why? That kind of thing. But I would try to avoid asking the question openly in the classroom. I would prefer individually filled out survey. The reason is when you throw a question publicly in the class, usually there are opinion leaders, right? So if that one, louder, more outspoken person begin to say something negatively, it tends to just drive the whole conversation in that direction, so that other students, you don't want to be oppositional, right? So even if other students feel differently, they don't want to say, oh, you guys hate this exercise, I really love it. So you don't really get the feedback from everybody. So if you really want to get students feedback, make sure you allow them to express their opinions freely and ideally individually to you, so you get the most out of it from this more, individually expression survey. Okay, so that's what I would think are important to make the activities interactive. Okay, next question. Is presentation of cultural content a good use of asynchronous class time? It could be if you figure that's what your students need. Like my colleague did, culture is a component in her every week's module. So a cultural, but since she teaches first year, I believe most of the videos or materials are actually in English, so that students knows, like when you go into a Chinese family, you usually want to take off your shoes and wear the slippers they offer you. So that kind of thing. So if you think your students need that, of course, it's a great thing to include. Okay, next one. One way to effectively assess learners' learning outcomes through asynchronous teaching, specifically for watching recorded lectures, is through embedded quizzes and questions, but making those videos is very time consuming. Yeah, I do flipped learning, right, on a daily basis. So we consume a lot of instructional videos. You can try to find other effective ways to assess students' learning outcome in the mode of asynchronous teaching. So you've seen some other examples for earlier in the first hour for students to demonstrate learning. However, for this specific question, I want to address the root question is, how do you save time on making videos, right? So the first step now, depending on the language you teach, is to check what is already available, right? I try the first thing, if I want students to learn a structure or a grammar or cultural concept, the first thing is I go on YouTube, just try to search. And when you search, don't just search your keyword in Chinese, you search several versions of it. So you search it like, if I want to teach, the one we just saw was 结果, right? I searched 结果 as a phrase itself in both simplified and traditional, so that I might get different results, right? And I also type as a result in Chinese. So sometimes some teachers, they make the video, but they want to keep their title in English. They don't use the Chinese phrase. So you can possibly land on something just by using different keywords. Right? For Chinese specifically, and for other languages, see if you can find something similar. In Chinese, there's a website called Chinese Grammar Wiki. It's not video-based, but it has easy to understand grammar instruction, explanation in text. It's like a Wikipedia kind of thing, but it's on Chinese grammar. So sometimes I try to use videos as much as I can, but sometimes I just can't find anything. Then, and if I don't have time to make one on my own, I would use a page on it. It doesn't hurt to use it sometimes. Okay. Oh, and speaking of YouTube, I also have a YouTube channel. So I share all of the videos I have made on my YouTube channel. You just type my name, Amber Navarre, you're going to see my channel. So I have instructional videos and I also have grammar videos on it. And the last one is also Chinese Pacific. That site is very interesting in the sense that it is a collection of authentic Chinese clips, and you can do keyword search. So if you type the one we just saw, 结果, right? We type 结果, you can see video clips in which authentic TV shows in which people use that phrase. So I personally do a lot of video clipping myself. So when I watch a TV show in Chinese, so I see, oh, they use this word. Great. I like to have this short clip. I just record and clip it myself. But if you don't have this habit, you can use this website. You still need to control the difficulty level because it's just a keyword search of what is used in the video clip. It doesn't help you. You still have to watch it to decide whether it fits your student's proficiency level. Second way is you can work with colleagues, especially if you like rotate teaching the same level or you have teachers teaching the same level. I'm not sure whether it's plausible for you guys, but we have at BU, we have colleagues working on the same level. Okay, the last strategy is the one I usually resort to myself. That is just to power through it. Because a lot of times, I would say 50% of the time, I want to find a specific topic in the videos. I can find it 50% of the time. But the other 50% of the time, I can't. When I can't find it, I make the videos myself. So I just power through it. The initial effort is the most time consuming, but after that, you can always reuse your videos. I still think it's a worthwhile investment of time to make the videos because I not only use it for flipped learning to teach new grammar concept, I also use them if I teach a higher level and I find some students they still didn't get this grammar. I just refer them to this video without me explaining the whole thing, taking up the class time. I just say, well, this is the video, you can watch it. It especially works with pronunciation because there are a lot of pronunciation rules and I don't expect students, first semester students to get it the first time they learn all of them. So they need to like revisit a certain, and different students have trouble with different sounds. So having a video ready is really, really helpful. I made the pronunciation videos myself. You can find them on my video YouTube channel. So that will save you some time. Okay, next, outside online resources such as Chairman Bao. So that one is kind of like podcast collection site with Chinese news or some cultural content are great for asynchronous language learning. It would be great if we can see some specific teaching practice with an online resource in asynchronous mode. So you just saw examples of us using TV show clips. You can use the same kind of activity for a podcast or Chairman's Bow, or you can use them for leveled extensive reading, right? So what we do with this kind of online resources, when you use external materials, so to speak, when you use external materials, there are several things you can do. You can always have comprehension questions. If you want students to really understand everything in the material, you want to make sure they get it, right? So have them fill out comprehension questions after they process the materials. It doesn't matter whether it's reading or video or audio, right? But if you don't, that's not your goal. If your goal is to, for instance, extensive reading, you just want them to read as much as possible, you can just do completion check. Some of the leveled reading websites, when students finish a book, teachers get a notification, or you can have the result of the whole class. So you don't need to do anything. You just go to the page to see who has completed it and who hasn't. Or you can have students do learner's journal. So learner's journal takes different formats. So this model I like, it's called 3-2-1 model. So for instance, the content after 3-2-1 can be changed. You can have them list, say, after watching this video, 3 new things they have learned. So it's their pick, whatever they have learned. 2 things interesting or surprising for them. And at the end, they ask 1 question. So before your next class, you can look at students' questions, right? To see which questions are worth answering in your class hour, right? So that's one way for students to keep their learner's journal. You can have students, this one is called DAE model. This one is specifically for cultural content. So it's called describe, analyze, evaluate. So this one, I'm not going into details about it, but if you're interested, you just Google DAE model for cultural learning. Okay, so this is specifically if you want to present culture content in your asynchronous module. Or you can have very simple journal formats. Just have them keep learning notes, whatever they learn from it. It's their own notes. And you have a section for question. So students find this type of journal helpful because it's their own notes for grammar learning, right? So before the next quiz, they just take their notes out to review it. Okay, so that's what the activities I would have accompanying the external materials. Okay, next one. Can you provide a sample lesson plan? I believe I provided several in the first hour for what an asynchronous session might look like. So if you want to see more about other things, other types of things, you can ask me in chat or raise hand.
Tom, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. This goes back actually to something you presented earlier, and I had to step out for a few minutes, so I may have missed it, and forgive me if I'm asking something you answered, but you were talking about the replacement or a 50-minute, what would a 50-minute session look like if it's asynchronous? So we're moving from the four hours or 4 50-minute sessions, or in some cases even more in the case of French, of actual classroom contact, to moving one of those 50-minute portions to asynchronous. And when you're talking about doing that, are you talking about trying to find approximately 50 minutes worth of activities for the students? So the activities that they should be doing asynchronously equal about 50 minutes?
Yeah.
For us, that's it potentially represents a huge change, because the calculus has always been, and I don't know if this is official, I don't know if it's just Tulane, I don't know if this is a accrediting agency, but for every hour you spend in class, students are expected to spend about 2 hours outside of class doing prep work. So if we were to follow that, we would be losing two additional hours. We replace the in-class 50 minutes with asynchronous 50 minutes, but we'd lose an expectation of 2 hours that the students do outside of class. I'm just wondering how you would respond to that, if you see that as an issue.
So see, the first thing is, that's why in the beginning I mentioned that we don't want to think in terms of replacing the content. I totally understand the feeling of losing one precious hour you could use in the classroom, right? We went through this thing in the beginning when we converted as well. What I found is it actually helped me to use the class hours more wisely. And we didn't need to adjust the content. We just want to like for instance, I have daily assignments, right? So that already takes, if students come to class ready every day, that already saves me a lot of time. So I found I spend much less time explaining over and over again the same content in the classroom. So my classroom activities is already, I can spend more time to do meaningful learning in the classroom rather than repetition, right? So I don't think that day as a replacement of the class hour. I just think of my content has to be delivered in the 3 days, and the 3 days include every day's assignment, right?
Okay.
Another trick that I did is I can speak for my own module, right? Although roughly the content I would try to target 15 minutes, right? In fact, most students, well, I wouldn't say most students, there are some students who can even finish it in 30 minutes. And there are students who would spend 2 hours on it. That's the beauty of self-paced assignments, tasks, right? Some students would actually spend the 2 hours on the modules. You cannot guarantee everybody does, but as long as they achieve the learning effect, I don't really mind how much time they actually spend on this. There's always comprehension check, right? I make sure everybody, you get it. If not, there's a problem. But if you get it within 30 minutes, then great, you're great students, you're fast. If you didn't get it until like 2 hours, some students may spend 3 hours, then it's still fine, you get it, right? So I would target the average 15 minutes, but you can expect students for, say for my higher level courses, they watch a TV show and then they have to write a reflection. That's fine, the whole thing will definitely take 1.5 hours. So that's a combination of the class hour and assignment time, but you want to make sure they are aware of it.
I think I understand that, but it's just that in our case, we're moving from an expectation of 3 hours to an expectation of an average of an hour, and some will take more and some will take less. The expectation was 3 hours because there was the 1 hour in class and the 2 hours that they were supposed to spend outside of class. So you don't find that to be an issue? And
most of my colleagues didn't seem to have trouble with that. We did in the beginning. We were worried that would be an issue, right? But it turns out not really an issue. You really have to rethink how to use your class time effectively. That does take time and effort and design. But at the end, we are still able to finish what we want students to learn just within 3 days. It is doable. I can only say that. But I really think you only believe that after you've done it yourself.
I just want to be clear, it's not the loss of the 1 hour of class that I'm worried about. I accept that part of it, and that can be used effectively. It's the concomitant loss of an expectation of 2 additional hours of prep. I mean, I think you've answered the question, but I just want to make sure you understand that it's not, I'm worried about losing that contact hour. That's its own issue. And I think you're addressing that very well. It's that along with that 1 hour additional contact hour was an additional expectation of 2 hours of outside class prep.
I think as the teacher, you can decide what you want to have your students do for that hour, or that asynchronous hour with a little bit extra length. But when I do that, I did do that in some of my classes. I made sure my students understand that's a combination of that 1 contact hour and expected homework time. So as long as they understand it, I think there's no problem. You can have a little bit extra for the asynchronous day.
Okay.
I also sneakingly, my students do everyday assignments, right? But the funny thing is, we have Monday, Wednesday, Friday in person, right? And Thursday is our asynchronous day. What about Tuesday? my students do homework on Tuesday as well. So I also have students do a little bit on Tuesday. That's their daily assignment. So even for lower level, even the day they don't have a class, they have some assignments to complete. So you can find some time. There's always a little bit flexibility with assignments. Okay, anyone else?
Allison has her hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to follow on Tom's question. I think as I understand Tom's question, we're less concerned with what's happening in the classroom and more concerned with how we show that we're not reducing the rigor or whatever gets measured in this formula that we've been given, that 1 classroom hour equals 2 to 3 assignment hours. So it sounds to me, Tom, and maybe this is what you heard as well, that having that differential time period for the activities may be a way of accounting for it. Maybe particular to Tulane and what our provost expects, but since we have to write these accreditation reports and the accreditation reports don't often ask for the communicative competence that teachers are interested in instilling, that's I think. But anyway, I think it was helpful to have that range in which students would be able to complete the task. So thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
And Lynn?
Yes, thank you. So Amber, I was very curious about your pen pal project with your students. I think it's a good idea. And my question is really about the outcome of that project, because if you are pairing your students with native speakers, right? And the communication there, communicating with a native speaker has pros and cons. And one of the cons is that it's hard to get comprehensible input from the native speakers because those native speakers, if they speak in a certain way, and if you pair them with a sheer quality and quantity, right, in a way. So how do you address that in such projects? And or is it even a concern to you, to not have that much of a comprehensible input, but rather just as much as input as you can get,
Okay, so first of all, I am a fan of comprehensible input, right? But at the same time, not everything is catered to in real life. Not everything is catered to our students' proficiency, right? It is just at what point you are like sending them out to this big world in contact with the real input. Real input is not always made comprehensible for the students. So I don't particularly see the pen pal program as an input activity. I see it as an authentic communication activity for students. So if they get a letter that has something that is not comprehensible input, it uses, these are just second-year students, right? It uses a grammar structure they don't understand. It uses a word they don't know. First, if they really want to know, they can look it up. It is a self-learning effort. They are welcome to take on it on their own, right? They can come to ask me questions, but they never do. So they just want to figure it out themselves. And they can also, in fact, my students actually develop more confidence in this activity because they realize how much they do understand. They never understand everything in the letter, but they do understand the gist, or with some help, say dictionary or something, or ask clarification questions to their pen pal, they get better understanding. They understand the gist, right? So that's one thing. I don't particularly concerned about it. In other in-class activities, I would worry about comprehensible input, but for this specific activity, I don't really care because I don't want to like I don't want to monitor or control what they can talk about, what structures they can use. And it is two ways, right? Because at the same time, they also write letters in English. They realize their partners, their pen pals are facing exactly the same difficulty or challenge they are facing. So it, in a sense, normalize language learning. It's just a communication activity. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's how I see this specific task.
Yes. I think it's a very good point. The reason why I ask is because I did a project previously on Zhihu, as you know, the Chinese Quora, and I exposed my students to even a wider readers and writers, in the Chinese community. And I noticed that sometimes the unknown native speakers, in a way, they will write something that will really confuse the students. And so I asked that question to make sure, but I think you made a very good point that we want to make this a communicative activity rather than a purely, let's say, linguistic activity.
Right. If I am choosing a learning material, I wouldn't use pen pal letters. But for authentic communication, of course, why not? And they're free to ask their pen pal questions.
Right.
Okay. So do we have more, or can I move on? Okay, we're good.
We've got a few minutes left, so why don't you go ahead and move on?
All right, move on. Next slide is other questions. So we have 6 minutes left. So if there are other questions you really want an answer before we go, this is the best time to ask.
Can I ask something?
Yep.
Hi, Amber. I'm Nautical. I teach Japanese at Tulane University. I've been enjoying your lecture. I can imagine how students feel like in your class. My question is, how do you pair the pen pals? Since Lynn asked about it, and I do a summer program, and I pair up students in person in that case, but have problem of being paired with some non-communicative partner.
Yeah. Okay.
Like,
so we have different teachers doing pen pal programs with different universities here, right? So we have different styles. So some teachers would choose to just pair up students. In the beginning, it's random, right? Because nobody knows anyone. So it's random. The problem is, as you described, sometimes I, as a student, get paired with someone who doesn't talk much. That person always just send one line. So there's not so much I can keep writing about. And in the long run, it actually hurts my motivation, because if I always get one liner, I would want to write less, right? So
exactly.
The way I do it is I don't even control that. The pen pal program, I have very, very little control over it. The way I do it is I have students. So say both classes, I have 2 sections. So 2 class, 30 students and 30 students, right? If each student write 2, so 2 is my favorite number, each student write 2 letters. So that means 60 letters are going, half in English, half in Chinese, right? Going in their direction. So 60 letters divided by the 30 people, that means each person will get at least 1, potentially 2 or 3 even, right? But at least 1, and vice versa. So they can choose to write to whomever they like to write to. The problem is sometimes one conversation dies out, like you write to this person and that person doesn't like your letter, they choose to write it to another person. That's okay. You can also switch partners. You can also choose to write it to another person. So it's more like in real life, like if you are in a party, you talk to this person, you don't like the topic you talk about, no big deal, move to the next person. So it's easier for students who actually want to talk more with pen pals, find the person they can actually communicate with. If the students doesn't care, if they always write one-liners, they don't care who they write to, right? For the teacher, Yeah, for the teacher, it's also easier for my life because the more control you apply to this, first of all, it just students feel more freedom when they know the teacher is not controlling anything on this, right? Second thing, it takes my time. I already spent a whole lot of time doing, say, pronunciation feedback. I don't want to spend more time on the PenPal program. So that's how I did it. And so far, I've run it for 2 years, 4 semesters, and I didn't hear complaint from students about not being paired with someone because they can choose who they want to write to. Oh, and another thing is before they start writing the first letter in their own mailbox, I have students do self-introduction. So they have one self-introduction document in there and their pen pals as well. So they can already see what that person is interested in and they choose someone they feel they might want to talk to.
So to clarify, everyone can see everyone's letter. Is that
Yes.
what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. I see. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We maybe have time for one more quick question if anybody would like to jump in. Nina.
Thank you. So I just wonder how you deal with quizzes and tests, because we have lockdown browser now, which allows us to move the written test online. So I wonder, do you use any asynchronous time for those tests and free up more classroom time for communication and interaction?
I don't particularly do that. I know some of my colleagues, they do assessments, but I don't think they do tests online. So I don't have a specific reason for that. For myself, I like for that day, since I want that day to do other things different than other days. For that specific day, I don't want them to, I want them to have fun communicating with others. So that day I would like to keep it a fun day. So I've never done it myself, but I think it is possible, especially if your university has the tool that you can make sure students don't look up other things. But I always have a little bit concerns about that because you can lock the screen, right? But I can still look things up on my phone.
Well, there's also respondent monitor. So if the students have their camera on, it's kind of recording all their actions. So
yeah, I think ideally it is possible, right? But see, I'm looking at you right now, right? You don't see my headphone, but I have it right below. Yeah, because I have the elevated table, so I can still look things up.
So Amber, you do still have the written test, but you still conduct them in person, in the classroom? Okay.
For the past 2 semesters, we had to do it online because the whole course was online, right? We had to do it online, but we did find that students don't write, especially handwriting in Chinese. They don't, this cohort of students, because this semester we are on site, so they're back to normal classroom. Their character writing skills is much, much, much worse. Their speaking ability is compatible with earlier students before COVID, right? But their character writing skills really suffers from online for some reason. Even though you have their a section for them to do handwriting and take a picture, submit, somehow that specific skill still suffers.
They do their most homework and assignment by typing, right? Not writing by hand, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a common across universities that we're more going towards typing instead of handwriting, I think.
Yeah, so it depends on whether it is important for your curricular goals. We still want students to be able to write correctly, like at least like 80% instead of 30%.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so last thing, I see a quick question I can answer. Do you grade the journal entry? No, I don't. So for journals, it's for students' own learning purpose. So I would make sure they complete it, but I wouldn't grade it. I think that's about it, right, Adrian?
Yep, I think so. So thank you, everyone. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And we've had a marathon session right now and received a lot of great feedback and interesting ideas. And I know that I will definitely be visiting Amber's YouTube page to see what kind of resources are available there. If you have any questions, please feel free to follow up. And again, thank you, Amber, so much for sharing all of this experience. It's very, very interesting and helpful.
Hope it helps you guys, and just feel confident that, again, 100% of my colleagues, they would prefer this model. So I hope in 3 years, you guys feel that way too. Okay, thank you guys.